I always know when the fifth day arrives. Not because I look at the calendar. It's been hanging there for decoration for a long time. I just feel it. The light in the window becomes a little different, the morning a little more austere than usual. And inside, a quiet anticipation arises. On the 5th, she arrives. Always. She knocks twice, not loudly but confidently. Then she turns the key and comes in before I even have time to reach the door. She knows where the tea bags are, where I keep the sugar. She doesn't ask if I've eaten, but she always asks about the envelope, the same one. "Are you here?" she says with a smile, as if she's talking about the weather. I nod. Always. The envelope is already on the table, neatly. Inside is exactly what it should be. I even stick a sticker with her name on it. It's so convenient for her. She likes order, no unnecessary words. And I don't ask anymore. Not about why, not about how, not about why it's like this. Once, many years ago, I tried to talk about bills, about medicine, about how her pension was all she had to live on, but the words came out uncertain, too soft, or on the contrary, too tense. And she didn't like explanations. She said it was better when everything was clear. I agreed. Now I just say, "On the table, dear." And she takes it, always calmly. Then she sits down, drinks her tea, scrolls through her phone. Maybe she'll ask if I need anything, and I smile and say, "No, thank you. I have everything." Because everything I really want, you can't buy in a store. She's not the type who likes to sit around for a long time, but I'm still glad she comes, even if it's just for an envelope. Sometimes when the house is especially quiet, I sit by the window and remember her as a little girl, with pink cheeks, in a white dress with a lace collar. She loved to braid her doll's hair, and then she asked me to braid hers the same way. I always tried to do it neatly so she would like it. She would turn her head, laugh, and say I was pulling her hair. And then she would hug me, tightly, really tightly, not like she does now. Back then, everything seemed so simple. I baked pancakes for her, told her fairy tales, ironed her school uniform. She brought me autumn leaves, stacked in a pile, and said, "These are for you, Mom." And I felt needed. Her little hands, big eyes, all of that lived on in me for a long time, even when she grew up and started calling less often. At first I told myself that she had work, a family, responsibilities. Then I realized that I needed excuses more than she did. Now she comes regularly. On the 5th. She picks me up. She smiles. She says everything is fine. And I think, when did she stop hugging me just because? Not on special occasions, not on holidays, but just like before. When did that warm, childlike look that warmed me even in the coldest winters disappear from her eyes? I don't blame her. I really don't. I just miss her. I miss the little girl with pigtails who used to knock on my door and ask, "Aren't you tired, Mom?" Now I often get tired. But I don't say anything, because she doesn't ask. The days between her visits drag on slowly, like drops of syrup from an old bottle. I haven't looked at the clock in a long time. I tell the time by the light in the window, by the voices in the yard, by the footsteps of my neighbor who comes out every day to feed the pigeons. I have my own little rituals. I wake up early, not because I have to go anywhere, but because I can't sleep anymore. Over the years, my sleep has become as thin as paper. Sometimes I wake up from my own breathing. I sit down in a chair by the window, cover my shoulders with a shawl I knitted when I was young, and just sit there. I don't expect anything. I just watch the street wake up. People go to the store, children rush to school, someone carries coffee in a plastic cup, and someone else carries only themselves. I am no longer in a hurry. I have a kettle, several cups, and an old radio that hisses but still plays music. Sometimes I turn it on not for the songs, but just so that someone is talking in the house, even if it's a stranger's voice. I know how old I am and what life has in store for me. And yet, inside me there is still a woman, not just an old age. She wants to be treated with warmth. She wants to be asked sometimes, "How are you?" Not because it's necessary, but because it's sincere. I'm not complaining, no. I have everything I need: a warm blanket, a glass sugar bowl, neatly folded towels. I even iron the napkins, even though no one needs them anymore. It's just that order gives you the feeling that you still have some control over something, that at least something is in your hands. I make tea in a porcelain teapot that my husband gave me on our first anniversary. He said, "So you can drink from it for many, many years." I drink from it. Still. He's gone now. Sometimes I talk to him, not with my ears but with my mind. I tell him how everything is going. I tell him that our daughter is coming to visit, that she is healthy, that everything seems to be going well for her. I don't know if he can hear me, but it makes me feel a little better. I keep his shirts. Not all of them, of course, just a few. The simplest ones. I don't iron them or hang them up. I just know they're there, like a memory, like proof that he really was. Sometimes, when it's very quiet, I take one of them, press it to my chest, and sit like that. Not out of longing, but because my heart needs warmth. I rarely talk about this to anyone, because I hardly ever have conversations like that with anyone anymore. People are in a hurry, they have things to do, schedules, shopping. And for me, the day begins and ends without a schedule. Only one thing is certain: the 5th, and the envelope, and her. Today is the 5th again. I knew it from the moment I woke up without looking at the calendar. I woke up early, in the semi-darkness, and already knew from a special feeling in my chest that she would come. I put a clean cup on the table in advance, wiped the windowsill, and arranged some candies in a crystal vase. Although she doesn't eat them, she says she's watching her sugar intake. I put them there anyway. It just feels cozier. I prepared the envelope in advance as well. As always, I signed it neatly. For you. I appreciate it when everything is neat and organized. It is my way of saying, I remember, I care. She arrived a little later than usual, but I still heard her footsteps on the stairs. The same heels, the same rhythm. 2 short knocks, and the key turns in the lock. I sit in my chair, pretending to knit. In reality, I'm just holding the needles so my hands don't shake. She comes in, smiles quickly, almost fleetingly, and takes off her coat. She says, "Hi, Mom. How are you?" I nod. Fine, same as always. We don't hug. Not because we've had a fight. It's just the way it is. She sits down at the table, takes out her phone, glances at the envelope, doesn't pick it up right away, but I know she will before she leaves. I pour her some tea. She asks for no sugar. We are silent. She scrolls through her screen and I watch her. I watch her tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, press her lips together when she reads a message. I've known her since childhood, and yet every time I see her, I'm amazed at how grown up, strong, and busy she is now. We talk about the weather, prices, how poorly the roads are cleared in winter. Sometimes she asks if I need help with groceries. I smile. No, I have everything. I'm fine. And it's true. I try to get by. It's not always easy, but talking about it is awkward. I don't want to be a burden. She sits for 15 minutes, no more. Before leaving, she takes the envelope, puts it in her bag, and thanks me. I nod, as always. And she leaves. She closes the door behind her, but not right away. First, she rummages around in her pockets for a long time, looking for her gloves. All this time, I stand in the hallway, not coming close, just watching her. And I remember how she once asked me to button her jacket because she couldn't do it herself. And now she's walking down the stairs, quick and confident. I go back to the room, take her cup, and carry it to the kitchen. I don't wash it right away. I just watch the tea cool, leaving a warm trace at the bottom. That trace is almost all that remains after each of her visits. It disappears quickly, but while it's there, I cherish it. I learned to count a long time ago, not like when I was young, with tables, plans, and savings, but quietly, mentally, out of habit. I look at the amount of cereal left in the jar and estimate whether it will last until the end of the week. I take the bread and immediately cut it into thin slices so that it will last longer. Everything is simplified for me. I don't go hungry. No, don't imagine me as lonely and unhappy. I just have less of everything. But I'm used to it. I've learned to make do. I buy the cheapest milk in a soft carton because it's cheaper. I don't put sugar in my tea. I tell myself it's healthier that way. I try not to think about how I used to be able to afford a little more. I used to buy coffee, cookies for Sunday, a new scarf in the spring. Now, less often. I don't deny myself everything, but before every purchase I think, what if I need it for something important later? And I put it off. I keep money for emergencies, but emergencies never come, and life goes on. When the bills arrive, I neatly arrange them by date. First, electricity, then water. If I don't have enough, I wait until next month. In the meantime, I save. I don't feel ashamed or complain. I just live a little more quietly. I don't talk about this to my daughter. Why should I? She has her own worries, her children, her job, constant expenses. I don't help her. She's the one who takes care of me, so to speak. It's just that we show our care in different ways. She thinks that order and control are the most important things. But I want warmth, at least sometimes. Sometimes I think, if I had even part of my pension left, I would buy myself some jasmine-scented cream, or honey, or a new tray for the kitchen so that breakfast looks nice in the morning. But I tell myself that beauty isn't in things. Beauty is in peace, in a clean kitchen, in a cup of tea, in the fact that I can still choose what to look at, what to think about, what to remember. I'm not angry. It's just that sometimes it feels a little empty. Not because I don't have enough money, but because it feels like no one asks me what I want. But I cope. Because there are many people like me. We know how. We endure. And as long as I have my walls, my table, my morning routine, I hold on, quietly, as best I can. I've always believed that housekeeping isn't about money, it's about attitude. Even if you don't have much in your home, it doesn't mean it isn't cozy. I know how to make soup out of leftovers. A few potatoes, an onion, a couple of spoonfuls of grain, and voila, broth. I add a bay leaf and a pinch of patience. It's simple, but filling. Sometimes I bake flatbread in a frying pan, flour, water, and warm hands. That's all you need. I have some old pots, the aluminum ones. Someone else would have thrown them out long ago, but I love them. So many good things have been cooked in them. Apricot jam, borscht on Sundays, potatoes for my son-in-law when he used to visit. Every scratch is like a line in a diary. I mend socks carefully, almost imperceptibly. Not out of necessity, but because I don't like throwing away things that can still be used. Everything has its place. Buttons are kept in a honey jar. Rags are folded by size. Even spoons are sorted by length. It's calmer that way. It's right. When I want something tasty, I bake a charlotte. No eggs, no fuss, just apples and cinnamon. I cut it into small pieces and eat one every evening as a reward. I don't turn on the lights unnecessarily. I open the curtains to let the sun in. It lights up the floor and reaches the armchair where I read, and that's enough for me. I also conserve water. When I wash the dishes, I collect them first, then wash them all at once. I have a small watering can that I use to water my flowers, violets, pelargoniums, and a couple of cacti. They have been living with me for a long time. They don't require much, but they are happy when I talk to them. I don't need much. The main thing is that everything is clean, calm, and soulful. Even old things, if you iron them, air them out, and fold them carefully, respond with warmth. I have a blanket that I've been sleeping under for over 20 years. It's not new, but it smells like home, and I know that as long as it covers me, I'm where I belong. Some might say, how poor, but I would say, with love. Because every detail is a part of me, my choice, my memory, my life. Once, before another 5th of the month, I sat at the table for a long time without touching my food. The envelope was already lying next to me, as always, neat, flat, signed. Everything was as usual. But on that day, something inside me fell silent and at the same time tensed up. It wasn't fear. It wasn't reproach. Just a feeling that I was disappearing too quickly. I thought, what if I keep a little for myself? Not for a whim, not for nonsense, but for medicine that will soon run out. Or for transportation, if I do decide to visit my friend on the other side of town. Or just for tea, which I love. Not because it's expensive, but because it smells like flowers, like childhood. I thought about it for a long time, weighed it up, argued with myself. I told myself, it's wrong, you always give everything away, why change? But then I whispered, don't you have any right? Even a little? In the end, I laid the bills out on the table as if I were playing solitaire. One went into an envelope, another went with it, then another went back into the envelope, and so on, until only 2 were left. I took one of them, the small one that seemed to have been left behind by accident, folded it, and hid it in a pocket of the box. Not with joy, no, with excitement, as if I had done something too bold for myself. And then I covered the envelope with a napkin again, made tea, dusted as usual, and waited. She came in as usual. She took off her coat, sat down at the table, glanced at the envelope, thanked me. Everything was as usual. But I sat across from her and waited, waiting for her to say something, to notice. There was no hint. She took the envelope and left, and I stayed, with a strange feeling of peace, not joy, but quiet affirmation of myself. Later, I opened the box several times and looked at the bill. I didn't spend it. I just kept it, as a symbol, that I still existed, that I still had a choice. And you know, sometimes that's enough. Not to buy something, just to know that you can, that you have something to fall back on, even if it's just a little, even if it's just for yourself. Several days passed, and I still couldn't make up my mind. The bill lay in the box, folded in a corner, like a little secret. Every time I opened the box, I asked myself, well, now? Today? I didn't spend it right away, not because I felt sorry for it, but because I wanted it to be real. Not just a purchase, but a step that made sense. And then one day, on my way to the pharmacy, I decided to take the long way instead of the shortcut, through the old alley where I used to walk with my husband. There, at the crosswalk, as before, stood an elderly woman with flowers, a white kerchief, blue eyes, her hands in mittens, despite the spring weather. On the newspaper were bouquets of lilies of the valley. I stopped. Lilies of the valley were ours. He gave them to me every spring, even when it was hard to walk, even when flowers were very expensive. He knew that lilies of the valley were not just a fragrance for me, they were a memory. I looked at them for a long time, then took out that very banknote and unfolded it. The woman smiled, as if she understood without asking. I chose a small bouquet wrapped in newspaper with the date from 20 years ago. At home, I put it in a glass tumbler, not a vase. It looked more modest that way. I placed it on the windowsill. The room was immediately filled with a scent, light, almost imperceptible, like the breath of memories. I sat down next to it and just stared for a long time, thinking of nothing. I felt calm, not because of the flowers, because I had made a decision, because I had allowed myself something unnecessary, but beloved, because I hadn't forgotten who I was, that I could choose, even if it was only once a month, even if it was only once. But it didn't matter. Afterwards, I walked a little further down the street and sat down on a bench at the trolley bus stop. I wasn't in a hurry to get home. I just watched people go by. Some had bags, some had headphones, and I had lilies of the valley, and my heart began to beat a little slower. Not because of old age, but because of the feeling that I wasn't just existing, but still living. We rarely sit on the bench near the entrance, only when it's really warm. Today is just such a day. The sun is not burning, but warming. The wind is light. The air smells of trees and distant conversations. Grace, my neighbor from the 3rd floor, sat down next to me. We're not close friends, but we talk like normal people. She always asks how I am, without attaching any particular meaning to it, just as if she's remembering to be attentive. I replied that everything was fine. Then we sat there silently watching the passers-by. Someone was walking their dog, someone was rushing by with bags. Suddenly Grace said, "I'm sorry to pry, but does your daughter help you at all? I know you do everything yourself." I looked at her and didn't know how to respond. I wanted to say something familiar. "Yes, she helps. Everything's fine." But suddenly something inside me trembled. It wasn't resentment or complaint, just fatigue from the silence. I said quietly, "You know, she doesn't really help. She thinks she's helping when she comes to get her pension." Grace looked at me in surprise but said nothing. I continued calmly, almost casually. "She's always been practical. And now she says she needs it more. She has children, expenses. And I don't really need it. I don't argue. She's not rude. It's just as if I'm part of her plans, not a person." Grace paused, then exhaled. "That's how we live. We raised them ourselves, thinking they'd say kind words to us in our old age." I didn't answer, because I didn't want to discuss my daughter. I just needed someone to know, not to judge, not to advise, not to pity, just to know. Sometimes that's enough, not to be alone inside your own thoughts. We sat there for a while longer. Then she got up and said, "Hang in there. You're strong." And I thought, I'm not strong. I've just learned to be calm when no one asks how I really am. And there's something to that too, in the ability to live with unspoken things without losing yourself. I went home, looked at the lilies of the valley still standing on the windowsill, and smiled quietly. Sometimes you can talk after all. If not for an answer, then at least for the silence that understands. The morning began as usual. Tea with cookies, a warm robe, the radio whispering the news softly. But I found an envelope in the drawer, an ordinary white envelope with a thin stamp. My name and address, everything as usual. But my heart skipped a beat, as if the handwriting was too straight, too formal. I opened it carefully without rushing. There was an invitation to undergo a routine medical examination, nothing to worry about. But still, I felt a twinge inside. I understood. It was out of concern, preventive care, attention. But on the other hand, how would I get there? It was in a different neighborhood. I would have to make an appointment in advance, then go there, and it might be evening by the time I got back. It wasn't the trip itself. It was the fact that I would be alone. It was like standing at the school door on the first day of school again. Everything seemed familiar, but it was scary. The thought immediately flashed through my mind. Maybe I should call her, just ask if she could drive me. But then, out of habit, I told myself, don't. She's busy. She has work, things to do. And why bother her when I can do it myself? I took the piece of paper, folded it, and put it in the drawer. I sat down by the window and watched the passers-by for a long time. No one was in a hurry. Even the rain seemed to be falling slowly. I remembered how we used to go to the clinic together. She would hold my hand, and then I would hold hers. Now everything is different. But you know, I felt a little better inside, because I realized that even if I went alone, I could handle it. Slowly, without rushing. I'll take an umbrella, a thermos of tea, and a book for the road. I don't need much. The main thing is to keep moving. I won't ask her, not out of pride, just because it's calmer that way. And if I do call, it won't be to complain, just to say I'm going for a checkup, so she knows, so that somewhere inside her, she knows that her mother is still holding on, and maybe someday that will change something. I left the house early when the city was still asleep. The air was cool but not cold, and for the first time in a long time, I felt that even the street could be kind, if you walked slowly. I put everything I needed in my bag beforehand, my passport, the referral, a small sandwich box with a piece of bread, and a thermos of tea. I didn't want to disturb anyone, so I did everything as if I were going for a regular walk. A girl of about 20 was standing at the bus stop with headphones on. When the trolley bus arrived, she held the door open for me. I thanked her, and she nodded without taking off her headphones. It seemed like a small thing, but inside, something melted. I felt quiet gratitude that such small gestures still existed in the world, unobtrusive but sincere. The clinic was as usual: queues, the smell of disinfectant, hustle and bustle. But next to me at the reception desk was a woman about my age. We struck up a conversation. She asked where I was from and if it was difficult to get there. Then she said, "If you need anything, I'll be here for a while. I can tell you where to go." We sat next to each other, discussing the weather, the price of cabbage, and linden tea. And I thought again, sometimes strangers talk to you in a way that your own family doesn't always know how to. When it was my turn, the doctor was very attentive. He asked if I was comfortable and if I was tired. The examination went quickly, but I didn't rush to leave. I thanked him. He smiled and said, "Come back if you need anything. We're always here to help." I left the office, and the same woman was waiting in the hallway. "I waited for you. Is everything okay?" I nodded. And at that moment, I didn't feel like a patient or a lonely old woman, but simply a person that someone cared about. We left together. At the bus stop, she waved, and I, standing there with my thermos in my hands, suddenly realized that help doesn't always come from where you expect it, and warmth isn't always a duty. Sometimes it's just someone's kind "good morning," or a glance, or a door held open. I drove home feeling like I was living a little again. Not like before, no, but alive. And maybe as long as I have at least one more trip like this, it means I can still be myself. She came, as always, on the 5th. She knocked on the door briefly, as if out of formality. I already knew that there would be no questions or conversation after that knock. Just a quick, "How are you?" and then on with the usual routine. But this time I waited. Not in the sense that I was hoping for something, but in the sense that something inside me had finally come to a head. While she was taking off her coat, I made tea. I poured it into her favorite mug with blue flowers, even though she hadn't paid any attention to it for a long time. We sat down at the table. She looked at her phone, scrolling through something quickly, as if she were really in a hurry. I sat opposite her, and suddenly, very quietly, almost in a whisper, said, "Can I ask you something?" She looked up, surprised but not annoyed. "Why do you take my pension every month?" I didn't say it with resentment, not a hint of reproach, just as a person who needs to understand. She froze for a second, as if she didn't immediately understand what I was talking about. Then she put her phone down. She paused. Then she said, "You know how expensive everything is these days. Igor and I are struggling, loans, groceries, kids, and you don't really need it. You hardly ever go anywhere." I nodded, not because I agreed, but because I heard her, and there was truth in her words, her truth, not mine. I looked at her face, tired, cold, and I thought, it must be hard for her too. She just doesn't know how to talk about it gently. She doesn't know how to ask. She only knows how to take. I didn't argue. I just said, "You know, sometimes it's not money I need. It's just the feeling that I still mean something, not as a source, but as a mother." She turned away. She said, "You're making everything complicated." Then she got up, took the envelope, and went to the door. I didn't stop her. I wasn't angry. I just sat there and listened to her leave. Footsteps, creaking, the door slamming. The room fell silent again. I drank my tea, cold, but not bitter. And I thought. I asked the question, without shouting, without tears. I just said what I had been keeping inside for so long, and maybe one day she will understand that this was my quietest cry for help. Later, when everything had quieted down again, I sat by the window and stared for a long time at the evening light falling on the windowsill. Sometimes it seems to me that it comes only to me, so soft, a little tired, as if it had lived a long day itself. I sat and thought, it wasn't always like this. There were other days. There were moments when her eyes were warmer, when her voice sounded not like a demand, but like concern. I remember one such day well. For some reason, it stayed with me, like a dried leaf in a book, by accident, but forever. It was winter. I had a fever and could hardly get out of bed. She came unexpectedly, with a bag full of groceries and even a thermos of broth. She heated it up herself, put it by my bed, and adjusted my pillow. She sat down next to me and said, "Just lie there. I'll take care of everything." I lay there with my eyes closed, listening to her walking around the kitchen, washing the dishes, putting things away, and at that moment, everything was as it should be. No unnecessary words, just being there. And when she left, she covered me with a blanket, just as I had once covered her. I hold on to that memory, not because I want to justify her current coldness, but because I know that people don't just disappear. Sometimes all that remains in us is what was most real. I don't know why she changed, why she became a stranger. Maybe it was fatigue, maybe life took something important from her. But that winter, that day, I believe it was sincere. And if she was like that even once, then it's still alive in her, just deep down, hidden. I don't expect her to bring me broth again or sit down next to me without her phone in her hands. But if one day she just catches my eye, if she just says, "Mom, how are you?" I'll probably say that everything is fine, and I'll think to myself, "You found your way back, even if just a little, even if just for one evening." Sometimes I think, why can't I just say no? It's not because I'm afraid of a scandal, and it's not because I don't understand what's going on. It's because somewhere deep inside me, there is a strange, stubborn fear of not being needed. Even if it's not the way I want to be needed. Even if it's not out of love, but out of habit. I live alone. And every time I open the door, when someone comes in, even if it's with a cold face and a tired voice, it means I'm still here. My pension isn't just money. It's like the reason she comes. A reason to show up at this apartment, to ask, "How are you?" before opening her bag. And I stay silent. Not because I don't want change, but because I'm afraid that if I ever say no more, the door will simply stop opening, and the silence that already lives nearby will become complete, absolute. I catch myself agreeing to play this strange game, where I pretend that everything is fine, and she pretends to visit. But if I stop playing, everything will fall apart. There will be no game, no visits, no mom, only I will remain, and the room, and the evening when no one calls. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's the other way around. But years have taught me that sometimes even a weak attachment is all you have, and I cling to it like a last thread. Not because I have to, but because otherwise it's too empty. "I love them," she said, "but I'm not their bank, and I'm not their servant. I'm their mom, and that's not the same thing." For some reason, those words stuck with me, as if they had been written down. We said goodbye at the pharmacy. She wished me good health and lightness. And then I stood in front of the window for a long time, holding the prescription in my hand, and thought, and me, who am I now? Not in words, but inside. I'm not just giving money. I give silently. And it turns out that I don't leave myself even a small corner of freedom. But I'm a person too. I have a name. I have a voice. I have the right to say no, calmly. Maybe not today, but someday. To remain myself. So that at the end of my life, I won't be left with nothing. Today I bought myself a bun. Not because I need to, but because I want to. And this is probably the first step home. To the part of myself that I had almost forgotten. But which has been waiting for me all this time, patiently. In the afternoon, someone knocked on the door. Quietly, without pressure, without a key in the lock. A real knock, alive. At first, I couldn't believe it. I opened the door and almost gasped. Lyda was standing there, my friend. We used to work together at the library, sitting at the same desk, drinking tea together after our shifts. Then life took us in different directions. She has her own family, I have mine. Rare phone calls, cards on holidays. And now, suddenly, there she was, right on my doorstep, with the same look in her eyes, which always held more warmth than words. "You haven't changed," she said, hugging me. "Just a little grayer. I was walking by and thought I'd drop in. Something drew me here. We sat in the kitchen. We drank tea, ate cookies, and laughed. It was as if those decades hadn't passed, as if we hadn't seen each other for a couple of weeks. Lyda told me that she had retired and was helping her grandchildren, but that she was thinking more and more about her old friends, and so she went for a walk, and her feet brought her to my doorstep. Then she suddenly took out a small envelope. "This is for you. It's not much, don't worry. Just take it. I have it. And you go to the pharmacy or to that bakery where they have cinnamon buns." I wanted to refuse, of course, but she wouldn't let me. "It's not charity, it's friendship. You understand? Friendship isn't about must, it's about can and want." I took it, not out of need, but out of gratitude, for the gesture, for the fact that she remembers, for the fact that I'm still someone, not just mom, not just grandma, but a friend, a person. When she left, the apartment didn't feel empty, but light, as if the sun had peeked in through the windows and lingered. I sat down and thought, if only everyone knew how important simple visits are. Simple knocks on the door, simple words, "You are dear to me." She came as usual, towards the middle of the month. Everything went according to the usual script: her coat on the back of a chair, the kettle on the stove, small talk. I looked at her, and my heart was beating strangely, not with anxiety as it had before, but with determination, with readiness. I had been rehearsing this phrase in my head for a long time. I went over the words, discarding the unnecessary ones. I wanted it to sound simple, without any pretense, without any pretensions, just the truth. When she put her notebook next to her and said in her usual tone, "Mom, give me my pension, I'll divide it up later," I quietly looked up. "I'd like to keep a little for myself," I said calmly. "Just a little, for medicine, for a bun, for tea." She fell silent. She looked at me differently than before, not surprised, more attentive. "Are you sick?" she asked. I just realized that sometimes I need something too. A little. Not to harm you, not to hurt you, just so I don't feel completely empty. I'm not demanding, I'm asking. With respect. She sat silently. Then she leaned back in her chair and looked out the window. No drama. Just silence. "Okay," she said. "Just let me know in advance how much you need." That was all. But for me, it was a lot. After she left, I stood at the window, looking out at the yard, and suddenly I felt like I was standing on my own 2 feet again. Not completely, not loudly, but confidently, on my own. I went to the store first thing in the morning. The weather was mild, a light breeze, few clouds, the sky bright and almost transparent. I had a little money left in my pocket from my daughter's visit. Mine. Left to me not out of pity, not by accident, just because I asked. I walked slowly, with my cane, down a familiar street. There were no particular thoughts in my head, just a feeling that I could do something again, that I was making a decision. Like in my youth, when I had just received my salary and could choose between a warm scarf or my favorite book. I approached a bench at the bus stop. They always sold various small items there: thread, notebooks, mittens, handkerchiefs. Suddenly, my gaze fell on a scarf. It was beautiful. Dark blue, with a delicate white flower in the corner. The kind my mother would have used. The kind that smells like home. I picked it up. The fabric was soft, thin, but warm. I held it to my cheek. And immediately, it was as if I had touched something familiar. "It's the last one," said the saleswoman. "It's as if it was waiting for you." I bought it, without thinking, without hesitation. At home, I carefully tied it around my neck and looked in the mirror. The same person was looking back at me, only with a slightly straighter back, with a slightly clearer gaze. I sat down by the window, spread out a notebook I hadn't written in for a long time, and wrote, Today I bought myself a scarf, and I felt what it was like to be the mistress of at least one day, a small right to be myself, and in that, great happiness. She came again, without ringing the doorbell, but without the previous haste. She just walked in as before, with a light knock on the door. She was wearing the coat I had once given her. She put her bag in the corner and looked around. "It smells good. Did you bake something?" she asked. "Just buns," I replied. "I wanted something warm." We sat down to drink tea. We talked calmly. Not about the past, about the weather, about the bakery near the bus stop, about the new prices at the pharmacy. And then, almost casually, she took a small envelope out of her bag and put it next to me. "This is for you. It's not much. I understand that you need it too. I can't keep it all for myself." I didn't say anything. I just nodded. But inside, something stirred. Quietly. Not from happiness, but from relief. From the fact that she had seen. That something had shifted in her. "Thank you," I said. "I'll really need it. Just so I don't feel helpless." She nodded. She looked at the cup, twirling the teaspoon between her fingers. Then she said, "I didn't always do everything right. It was just hard for me too. But I guess that's no excuse. I'm starting to realize that you're the only one I have, and I'm the only one you have." I put my hand on top of hers. We still have time to slowly learn to be there for each other, in a different way. She stayed longer than usual. She washed her cup, straightened the tablecloth, took a bun out of her bag, with poppy seeds, just the way you like it. And she left, leaving behind not only the scent of her perfume, but also something new, warmth. That evening, I wrote in my notebook. Today, she brought more than just money. She brought care, a little, cautious care, and I accepted it, without resentment, without expectations, just as a sign that life can still take turns, not away, but towards something. The phone rang in the middle of the day. I was sitting by the window writing in my notebook when the birds in the tree opposite started a cheerful argument. At moments like this, I like the silence, not as loneliness, but as an opportunity to listen. I picked up the phone and immediately recognized my daughter's voice. "Mom, how are you?" We talked a little more, about the weather, about her grandchildren, about how everything was blooming at her dacha, and we said goodbye with a sense of calm that hadn't been there before. No heaviness, just a gentle shadow of hope. And when I hung up, the apartment felt really cozy, as if someone had adjusted the blanket on my shoulders and said, "You are important." I wrote down, "She called today," just because, to see how I was doing. I didn't answer like someone who owed her something. I answered like a mother. And it wasn't painful. It was a conversation. Small, but alive. We agreed to meet at the park near my house. I arrived a little early. I always do. I like to stand around for a while, breathe. It was a clear day. The sun was warm. The sky was almost cloudless. Only a few birds cut through it with their light wings. The bench under the linden tree was still free, and I sat down, closing my eyes. A couple of minutes later, I heard familiar footsteps. I looked up. She was walking slowly, wearing a light coat and a scarf tied the way I had once taught her. "Mom, you're early as always," she smiled, sitting down next to me. "Old habits," I replied. "I like to wait when I know I'll get what I'm waiting for." We walked slowly along the paths of the park. Mothers with strollers were walking nearby. Old men were feeding pigeons. Children were playing ball. I felt that I was part of the world again. Not an observer, not a shadow behind a curtain, but a person among others. We talked. Not about serious things, not about the past, just about what we saw, about funny little things. She told me how her grandson was growing a cactus, and I told her how I had learned to make semolina pudding, almost like when I was a child. We even laughed, real laughter. Then she gently took my arm. "Mom, don't think I've forgotten anything. It's just not always easy for me to talk. But I hear you. Now I hear you." I didn't answer. I just squeezed her hand a little tighter. When we got back home, she suggested, maybe we can go out together again sometime? I feel calm with you, and warm. Me too, I said. In the evening, sitting with a cup of tea by the window, I wrote in my notebook. We went for a walk, just like that, calmly, without rushing or reproaches. I held her arm, and she held mine, and I thought, maybe we haven't lost everything. Maybe we can grow something new. She came in the evening. I wasn't expecting her, but I wasn't surprised. Lately, her footsteps on the stairs had become familiar, unhurried, as if she were no longer rushing, but walking toward someone close to her. Not hello or I need something, but specifically, how are you? It even threw me off a little. I was used to other kinds of conversations, the ones where you need something, where you have to answer briefly and clearly. But this was something different, something real. Everything's fine, I replied. I'm just sitting here watching the birds. They're especially loud today. She smiled softly. I just thought, it's been a long time since I called just to say hi. Do you have everything you need? Can I buy you anything? I have everything, I said. I even have enough money left for tea and a bun. Thank you. There was a slight pause. Not awkward, just cozy. I was thinking, maybe we could go for a walk sometime, she asked. Only if you don't mind, just for fun, nothing special, just to chat. I smiled. I don't mind. I'd love to. Just let me know when. We talked a little more about the weather, about her grandchildren, about how everything was blooming at her dacha, and we said goodbye with a sense of calm that hadn't been there before. No heaviness, just a gentle shadow of hope. And when I hung up, the apartment felt really cozy, as if someone had adjusted the blanket on my shoulders and said, "You are important." I wrote down, she called today, just because, to see how I was doing. I didn't answer like someone who owed her something. I answered like a mother. And it wasn't painful. It was a conversation. Small, but alive. We agreed to meet at the park near my house. I arrived a little early. I always do. I like to stand around for a while, breathe. It was a clear day. The sun was warm. The sky was almost cloudless. Only a few birds cut through it with their light wings. The bench under the linden tree was still free, and I sat down, closing my eyes. Mom, don't think I've forgotten anything. It's just not always easy for me to talk. But I hear you. Now I hear you. I didn't answer. I just squeezed her hand a little tighter. When we got back home, she suggested, maybe we can go out together again sometime? I feel calm with you. And warm. Me too, I said. In the evening, sitting with a cup of tea by the window, I wrote in my notebook. We went for a walk. Just like that. Calmly, without rushing or reproaches. I held her arm, and she held mine. And I thought, maybe we haven't lost everything. Maybe we can grow something new. She came in the evening. I wasn't expecting her, but I wasn't surprised. Lately, her footsteps on the stairs had become familiar, unhurried, as if she were no longer rushing, but walking toward someone close to her. A couple of minutes later, I heard familiar footsteps. I looked up. She was walking slowly, wearing a light coat and a scarf tied the way I had once taught her. Mom, you're early as always, she smiled, sitting down next to me. Old habits, I replied. I like to wait when I know I'll get what I'm waiting for. We walked slowly along the paths of the park. Mothers with strollers were walking nearby. Old men were feeding pigeons. Children were playing ball. I felt that I was part of the world again. Not an observer, not a shadow behind a curtain, but a person among others. We talked. Not about serious things, not about the past, just about what we saw, about funny little things. She told me how her grandson was growing a cactus, and I told her how I had learned to make semolina pudding, almost like when I was a child. We even laughed. Real laughter. Then she gently took my arm. Mom, don't think I've forgotten anything. It's just not always easy for me to talk. But I hear you. Now I hear you. I didn't answer. I just squeezed her hand a little tighter. When we got back home, she suggested, maybe we can go out together again sometime. I feel calm with you. And warm. Me too, I said. In the evening, sitting with a cup of tea by the window, I wrote in my notebook. We went for a walk, just like that, calmly, without rushing or reproaches. I held her arm, and she held mine. And I thought, maybe we haven't lost everything. Maybe we can grow something new. She came in the evening. I wasn't expecting her, but I wasn't surprised. Lately, her footsteps on the stairs had become familiar, unhurried, as if she were no longer rushing, but walking toward someone close to her. Mom, I'll just be a minute, she said from the doorway, smiling. She was holding a paper bag. I didn't ask what it was. I just invited her into the kitchen and poured her some tea. We sat down and chatted for a while about the weather, the news, how the bus schedule had been changed at the bus stop. Then she cautiously handed me the bag. I saw this in the store and for some reason immediately thought of you. Inside was a cozy knitted vest, thin, light gray, with small pockets, even stitches, soft yarn, just right for keeping warm without feeling constricting. I ran my hand over the fabric. Suddenly my throat tightened with emotion, from the tenderness, from the surprise. It's beautiful, was all I could say, and it's my favorite color. I remember, she nodded. You've always liked calm colors. We were silent for a moment. Then she added, I just want you to be comfortable. It doesn't have to be expensive. The main thing is that it's warm. I put the vest on the back of a chair. It was like a sign. I'm thinking of you. I remember. No loud words, no promises, just gentle care, through the years, through the distance that once was between us. When she left, I sat by the window for a long time, and then wrote in my notebook. Today she brought a vest, warm, like a conversation, soft, like forgiveness. I put it on right away, and I felt my heart become quieter too. Comfort isn't just the warmth of things. It's when you are remembered, not because you have to be, but because you are loved. This time she knocked. I went to the door, surprised. She used to just come in. She knocked quietly, as if asking permission. And when I opened the door, I saw her eyes, not tired, not distracted, but attentive, and a little confused. Mom, can I come in? Of course, I said. We sat down in the kitchen. She didn't take off her coat right away. She just put her hands on the table, palms down, as if she were hiding something under them. I've wanted to talk to you for a long time, but I kept putting it off, and then I thought it didn't matter anymore. But now I realize it does. It matters a lot. I was silent. I listened. Because at moments like this, the most important thing is not to interrupt. I understand that I did a lot of things wrong, not out of malice, just out of exhaustion, out of resentment that I myself had created. Sometimes I felt that you had to do things, simply because you were my mother. And I seem to have forgotten that you were a person too, that you could also be hurt, offended, lonely. She fell silent. She looked down at her mug. I didn't rush to answer. I'm sorry, she said. Not because I have to, but because I really mean it. I'm ashamed of myself, for everything you never said out loud, but felt. I put my hand on hers. A light touch, no reproach. No, I told you so. I'm glad you came, I said quietly, and that you're not saying this out of guilt, but out of love, because I feel that you're different now. She cried for the first time in a long time, not loudly, truly. I don't need excuses, I said. I only need one thing, for you to be here, with yourself, with me, honestly, just like now. We sat there for a while longer, silently, together. The silence wasn't empty, but full of meaning. It no longer felt heavy, only the beginning of something new. Later, after she left, I wrote in my notebook, today she came to ask for forgiveness, But I had already forgiven her, long before that. Now she knows it too, and that means we are both free. Not from the past, but from the burden we no longer need to carry. She came in the afternoon, with a bag in one hand and a basket in the other. In the basket was a pie, fragrant like the ones from my childhood, with cabbage and eggs. I recognized the smell immediately, even from the doorway. "Mom, I baked it. Remember how you used to make it when I was a child?" she said, placing the basket on the table. "Of course I remember," I smiled. "Only your dough turns out better." We drank tea and talked. My heart felt light. That's how it is when no one demands anything from anyone. Just being there. Just kindness. Then she took an envelope out of her bag. It was thick, neat, and tied with a ribbon. "Mom, this is for you. I didn't know how to do it right. I want you to do what you want with it. You have the right to. You always have." I opened the envelope. There was money inside. Enough. Even more than I expected. I felt something tremble in my chest, but not from hurt, from the fact that I had been heard, respected, not because they had to, but because they wanted to do the right thing. "Why did you do this?" I began. "Because I have to do this for myself," she interrupted quietly. "Not to get back what I lost, not to buy my way out, but to close the chapter of my life where I was greedy, tired, and indifferent. I don't need that scar on my heart. I want you to know that I can't do this anymore, and I don't want to." I took the envelope. Not for the money, for the fact that it was the first step from heart to heart. And it wasn't me who took it. It was her. "Thank you," I said. "I don't need the money as much as I need this, your gaze, your words. You've become close to me again, and that's more precious than anything." That evening, I wrote in my notebook. Today she gave me back what she once took from me. But most importantly, she gave me back herself. Not because she had to, but because she understood. And because she loves me. It was sunny this morning. The light fell in stripes on the windowsill, and I thought it was a good day for something new, or something old but forgotten. We agreed to meet without any reason, just because, as if there had never been any hard feelings between us. She came with a bag in her hand, from which small flower sprouts peeked out, violets, marigolds, even a couple of parsley bushes. "Shall we plant them?" she asked, smiling. "Of course," I replied. "The earth misses kind hands." We went out into the yard, to the old flower bed by the front door. She helped me remember the names of the flowers that used to grow there: nasturtiums, marigolds, chamomile. I showed her the place where my mother's burgundy peony once bloomed. She was surprised that I even remembered the smell. "I don't think I remembered anything before," she admitted. "Everything seemed dusty and useless. But now it's as if my heart has opened and light is pouring in." We worked in silence, transplanting, loosening the soil, watering. Birds were singing, children were laughing nearby. And I suddenly realized, this is it, the real moment. Not loud, not festive, but alive, with earth under my fingernails, the sun on my neck, and warmth nearby.